So for those who don't know me, I'm Brandi Lewis. I am a dual title PhD candidate in art education and in women's gender and sexuality studies. Just checking folks on Zoom, can you hear me okay?
That thumbs up for
Cool.
me.
So I'm gonna give this a little more informally than maybe I had planned, but I also think that talking about methodology can get a little dry, so maybe that will help with that. Um, So I am looking at arts-based research as a methodology that I would like to use for my dissertation project. So developed by Elliot Eisner, arts-based research is basically uh, really any research that is using arts as some form of the process. Um, so that could be data generation, analysis, interpretation, dissemination. Oftentimes, arts-based research is culminating in some kind of public exhibit or some kind of some venue where the work is being seen, not just necessarily as like a scholarly article. Um, so my goal here today is when looking at Wikipedia and what kind of information was out there, this project started for me because I was trying to explain to somebody outside of the field what artography was. And so I was like Googling and I came across artography listed under arts-based research. And then when I looked at arts-based research, there really wasn't a lot there. So there's like maybe I would say a full page of content, maybe less. And nothing about the nitty-gritties or specifics of arts-based research, but mostly just here's a general overview, and then here's how artography kind of fits into it. So I wanted to kind of give a framing of arts-based research. So it's free form. It's meant to be a form of doing scholarship that isn't burdened or isn't beholden to traditional ways of knowing or being. It's also a sort of resistance to the dichotomies of like knowing and feeling and expression and scholarship. So thinking about arts-based research, it draws from oppositional, subversive, transformational, and otherwise resistant capabilities in the arts. So for me, I was thinking about all of the spaces that I see arts-based research, and it's in a lot of activist kinds of spaces, but I wasn't really seeing that reflected in the way it was presented on Wikipedia. Um, so Patricia Levy has like a qualitative or a textbook on qualitative inquiry. And so she describes arts-based research as an ontology that recognizes artistic, intersubjective realities that are emerging and shifting, dialectical, hard to pin, difficult, and that are difficult to convey in standard modes. So arts-based research is a way to introduce sort of relationality, fluidity, which are also major aspects of research that I'm interested in and major ideology or frameworks that I work within as well. Um, and so just thinking about the ways that Elliot Eisner describes good, and I'm going to scare quote good, good arts-based research ought to generate questions worth asking and ideas worth pursuing. The quality of our work by far our most valuable is our most valuable resource for ensuring future arts-based research. So basically, he's saying that in doing good work, we will continue having or validating and reifying arts-based research as a methodology that has a place in academia. He argues that it needs people to know how to be creative, people who make films, who do narratives, literary texts, and different kinds of making as ways of being and ways of producing knowledge in academia. And then it needs an outlet, right? So this idea that there's an exhibit, there's something where you're showing those works or that material to other people. Um, and then the other thing I just wanted to add is this idea of like on that Wikipedia page, there really isn't a lot of information on similar kinds of methodologies or methodologies that are frequently paired with arts-based research. So I wanted to include those because a lot of the sort of methodological readings that I have done have really been interested in arts-based research as action research, as participatory research, as community-based research. So not just the process of creating new knowledge through the self, but also through communal practices with the expectation that you're trying to make a difference, that you're trying to make some kind of change. So I have kind of general outlines of what action research and participatory research are. But with action research is basically you're trying to make a difference. With participatory research, you are working with people. I didn't have space to include community-based research, which is the idea that the work that you're doing starts with a community rather than like you come to them with your set of ideas. They are telling you these are our needs. So how do we make research that is oriented around that? So my three main areas of focus today are going to be feminist arts-based research, queer arts-based research, and then I kind of loosely say disability arts-based research. I initially put disabled, but we can talk about the politics of that. So oddly, when I was researching how to frame arts-based research, I can't tell you the number of articles that I came across that use that in their title. So like feminist arts-based research, but they never actually define what that is or what it looks like or what its parameters are. So our own Karen Kiefer Boyd says, while arts-based research in and of itself is not necessarily a feminist, critical, or post-colonial approach to research, a social justice approach to arts-based research involves continual critical reflexivity in response to injustice. Arts-based research enacted through social justice activist approaches examines gender inequalities manifested through different forms of privilege and the ways that they entangle with other categories of social class and what structures social life. Another feminist arts-based scholar, Darlene Clover, argues that in feminist arts-based research, researchers draw upon women's artistic sensibilities to encourage them to tackle pressing contemporary issues, critically explores complexities, and to take more control over their lives. So again, this idea of things being actionable. Feminist approaches to arts-based research are not neutral, but seek to identify and disrupt inequitable knowledge and power patterns and enable criticisms to be appreciated as creative arts. I'm going to skip over this just to be conscious of time, but I also included the proposed text that I have for each entry. So this is how I am defining arts-based or feminist arts-based research for Wikipedia. The second category that I was thinking about was queer arts-based research. So again, with similar to feminist arts-based research, both of these arenas, both the feminist and the queer movements, were intricately tied to artistic movements and movements of self-expression that have traditionally been marginalized by the sort of major systems of power. So Denton and Kane argue that arts-based research is a powerful methodological choice for queer research because of their shared historical roots. And so they know the relationships to queer movements and activism like ACT UP and the HIV quilt. They argue that queer activism aligns with queer values. So it is arts-based research aligns with the values of queer researchers, but it also aligns with the goals for participants as well. So being sort of, the literal like notion of queering is to make things strange. And like, what are we doing if art if not making things kind of strange? And then the third area where it really relates to arts-based research is the construction of queer epistemologies. So they argue that arts-based research as a paradigm and queer epistemology are compatible and are capacious departures from normative qualitative frameworks. So some of the framing that I'm seeing is that there is space to make strange, there's open-endedness, there's ambiguity, there's flux, there's hybridity in the same ways that we're seeing in arts-based research. In the Oxford Encyclopedias of Communication, Faulkner and Polino argue that by emphasizing these diverse ways of knowing, researchers can deconstruct the strict boundaries imposed by traditional research processes. Queer arts-based research puts critical theory into action with an emphasis on the use of aesthetic power of art. Additionally, queer arts-based research allows individuals to question taken for granted conventions that shape social understandings of gender, sex, sexuality in a subjective and participatory way. So again, a lot of alignment with feminist arts-based research practices as well. And then the last area that I'm going to try to breeze through because I've got 30 seconds left is thinking about disability or a disabled arts-based research practice. So again, these are arenas where marginalized voices are not really people study these areas in academia, but it's always an upward battle to try to get those voices included in that research with agency. And so kind of drawing on the disabilities rights movement, which has the slogan, nothing about us without us, I see disability arts-based research as really incorporating the voices of disabled people into academic research. And as that ties to arts-based research, really fulfilling those needs. So Nguyen, Gonick, and Bu frame disability arts-based research is a critical approach that imagines the what might be. So thinking about futurity, thinking about, again, action and transformation for disabled people. So what arts-based approaches offer to disability are different ways and access of ways to knowings and routes to knowledge that include but are not limited to language and narratives. Gonick outlines for participants who may not have had any experience sharing their personal stories, maybe don't have a habit of self-reflexivity or are not conscious of the works or the forces that are shaping their lives. Arts-based research approaches may offer a means of reimagining what might be and a way of processing the sort of pressures in the world around them. And then that's also my text. I've got my references, but I also just wanted to close with like some quick sources on different feminist arts-based researchers. I have dates on here. I have a whole lot more people, but Karen, obviously, Darlene Clover, that is a dupe. There should be a different name there. Casey Burkholder and Amelia Thorpe, Denton and Kane, Furman et al., Shea and Yang, and then Miles Perez and Jenkins are examples of other researchers who are doing queer arts-based research. And then disability arts-based research is Petra Kuppers, Claire Penketh, Alice Wexler, who we were just talking about in the break, and John Derby, and then Karen Kiefer Board. And I just want to also stress that there is a lot of overlap between these scholars doing, it's not just like, oh, you're like in the disability camp, so you can't do feminist work, or you're doing feminist work, so you can't do queer work. I see a lot of people on the queer list doing feminist work and also doing disability work. So also thinking about the fluidity and the relationality between those subcategories in that research as well. So